Welcome to Life Expansion After 50. Today I'll be talking about the human needs as they relate to life expansion. A big part of the life expansion journey involves overcoming the effects of the conditioning that we've been reinforcing most of our lives. This conditioning is largely based on what we learned through automatic downloading from ages 0 to 7. Essentially, we're in theta and alpha state for those years, and we don't have to work for everything that we're learning. We don't need the language, we just observe. To start, I want to make a distinction between needs and motivations. Needs are about survival, while motivation is about thriving. Both can work either way, but it's important to understand the distinction when you're working on designing the rest of your adult life, a life that you will love living. At 50, most of us still have more than half our adult life ahead of us. First, let's talk about the 6 human needs. Introduced by Sigmund Freud and later organized by Abraham Maslow, you're probably familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The 6 human needs are broad motivational drives that encompass both external and internal factors. These needs include certainty and variety, significance and connection, I'll call those the first 2 pairs, and then growth and contribution. Each of these needs plays a crucial role in shaping our behaviors and actions, driving us towards safety, excitement, recognition, bonding, development, and altruism. Now, there's a natural tension between the first 2 pairs. We have certainty and variety, and you can see how you can get so much variety that you lose certainty, and you can have so much certainty that you don't have the variety. Significance and connection, same way. You can have so much significance that you're no longer feeling connected, or you can have so much connection that you're no longer feeling significant. So if we're focusing on that ebb and flow, we can get it wrong more often than we get it right. By focusing on the last pair of growth and contribution, you can achieve the first 4 needs in the right balance without stressing about it. This idea was popularized by Tony Robbins as he covered the 6 human needs. When seen through this lens, there's a natural connection with self-actualization and purpose. You can see the growth and contribution, self-actualization and purpose. You can see how they go together. The significance of this in relation to life expansion after 50 is that by our 60s, most of us have taken care of the survival needs that drove us in the first half of our adult life. There are still things to do, but with fewer options available to us and having met many of our important goals from 20 and 30 years earlier, we're in a better position to put in the effort necessary to pursue purpose, self-actualization, and design that life that you'll love living. Next, I want to introduce the self-determination theory, the pillars of intrinsic motivation. These are autonomy, and they're self-explanatory: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. I first became interested in this often forgotten theory because of how well it fits with a leader as coach methodology for leading teams in times of constant change. As I delved deeper into it, I noticed how powerful it is for personal leadership as well. When it comes to life expansion after 50, this journey may require more personal leadership than you may think. Fortunately, because there's so much reinforcement from dopamine during self-actualization activities, it doesn't always feel like work. By focusing on growth and contribution and understanding how they connect with autonomy, competence, and relatedness, we can design a life that meets our needs and fuels our passion for development and service. Embrace the journey of continuous growth and meaningful contribution, and create the life that you design proactively based on your values, purpose, and what fulfills you. Let's first talk about the growth and contribution. Growth, one of the 6 human needs, is about continuous personal and professional development. It's the drive to learn new skills, expand our knowledge, and improve ourselves. This need for growth can be seamlessly integrated with the intrinsic motivation elements of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. On the other hand, contribution is about giving back and making a positive impact on others. It's the need to serve, help, and make a difference in our community. This need for contribution aligns closely with the elements of intrinsic motivation. Now, the 3 pillars. Autonomy allows us to take control of our growth journey. It encourages self-directed learning and the pursuit of personal development on our own terms. When we have the freedom to choose our path, growth becomes a more fulfilling and personalized experience. It provides the freedom to choose how and where we contribute. It allows us to take ownership of our contributions and find personal fulfillment in making a difference. When we have the autonomy to decide our contributions, we're more motivated and engaged in our efforts. In contrast, without personal leadership, the default is to fall back on what we've been conditioned to do. And this conditioning is from a different time and probably doesn't serve your current values. Competence drives us to master new skills and achieve a sense of proficiency in our endeavors, which is directly related to growth. It's also about becoming effective and capable in our activities. There's added security that can come from developing competence, and furthermore, it puts us in a position to enhance our contributions. There's a quote from Proverbs that says, "A man's gift will make room for him and bring him before great men." As we develop our competence, our contributions become more significant and impactful, increasing our sense of purpose. Then relatedness enhances our growth through social interactions, collaborations, and shared learning. When we learn and grow together with others, we build stronger connections and a sense of community. This social aspect of growth makes the journey more enjoyable and enriching. This is important because as we get older, there's a trend towards isolation. I've seen that loneliness is becoming a larger problem as the over 50 crowd expands. It's been called the unaddressed health problem. By choosing where, how, and with whom you share your contributions, you can strengthen the sense of connection and community. By helping others and making a positive impact, we build deeper relationships and a sense of belonging. Contribution, when combined with relatedness, creates a powerful cycle of giving and receiving, enriching both our lives and the lives of those that we help. None of this is possible without the ability to neutralize the resistance factors from past conditioning, while simultaneously strengthening empowerment catalysts. In short, I'll frame it as having a growth mindset as you approach the idea of self-expansion in later years. Unfortunately, it's not as simple as it sounds. Mindsets can shift very quickly, and you can have a growth mindset in one area, but a fixed mindset within a subset of that same area. These are often not obvious to the person who's assessing themselves. Here are a few obstacles to maintaining a growth mindset. One is rising above the line. Now, this can trigger anxiety. If you think about rising above the line and you're in this zone, and we've been in this comfort zone, we have a low and we have a high, and we keep bouncing back and forth between those two. It's our comfort zone. We sometimes skip the lessons that we're supposed to learn, and so we never break out of that range. When you start working on a life expansion, it's like rising above the line. Even if it's not figuratively higher than what you've done before, it's new ground, new territory. And anytime you're going into new territory, that's like rising above the line. The problem with rising above the line in this idea of new territory is that the unconscious does not like the unfamiliar. It treats it as a threat. And so we get this excitement that happens because of the unfamiliar. The challenge is, and you may have heard this, excitement and anxiety have a similar feel. And because this excitement can be misinterpreted as anxiety, we start looking for the other shoe to drop. We start thinking maybe we're getting it wrong. We start second guessing ourselves. That can turn from an empowerment catalyst into a resistance factor as we start doubting ourselves and we start running out old patterns that are there to keep us from hurting ourselves or to keep us from losing money, when it's not that at all. In fact, if you think about it this way, when you are breaking above that line, and by the way, breaking above the line is not just a line, it's more of a barrier because you have things like stories and habits and patterns and beliefs and on that are in there that you have to overcome. And this is why it can take some time to completely clear the line. So I call this feeling that we have cognitive dissonance. You put a label on it and then it makes more sense. In fact, as you're going above the line, and you start to notice that feeling of excitement that then becomes cognitive dissonance, it may feel like brain fog. Just remember, when you go to bed and you wake up the next day, usually it will be gone because you've sort of resolved those inconsistencies. Think of it like this. Any breakthrough and moving above the line, a line that you've never been before, is a breakthrough. And a breakthrough is like a break with the past. That break from the past is going to bring with it some confusion. That confusion adds to that feeling of cognitive dissonance that you have, that brain fog. You want to start to notice the difference between that excitement that comes with breaking above the line, which I'm calling cognitive dissonance, and the feeling of anxiety as you're approaching that lower limit, where you're literally running the risk of losing something. This way, you don't turn a nice upward trajectory into the potential anxiety spiral. The second one is the speed of the unconscious processing. Now, this can trigger a person into a fixed mindset as well. The unconscious can process 11 million bits per second. By 0.2 of a second, which is roughly reaction time of the conscious mind, the unconscious has the potential of already processing 2 million bits. This is why you can see something and start getting triggered even before you think about it. When you were younger, driving around, if you happen to be an aggressive driver, you may recall how when you see the police car lights lighting up behind you, you instantly hit the brakes. You may feel the heart pumping. You feel the cortisol running through your body, even before you've had a chance to realize that you're going well within the speed limit. It's very similarly as well. You could be driving with a passenger, and as soon as they see a police car, they say, slow down. They don't even look at your speedometer. It's just, you can see it in real time how fast the unconscious works and how that reaction can kick in. Well, consider that you've been reinforcing this reaction over and over for the last 20 or 30 years, and it's a conditioned response. That conditioned response, and I'm going to call it a reaction, because I like to think of it in terms of the reaction leading to or being connected to meaning, and then if you're doing it right, you can choose your response. In other words, by putting a pause between stimulus and response, you can choose the response. If you allow your reaction to be the meaning and the response, you have no pause, and you've given up the power of choice, you've given up agency. So just remember, when you start getting those immediate impulses, step back and start building a new pattern of pausing. Most of the things that we face are not on the level of a Serengeti tiger, so we don't need that instantaneous reaction and all the cortisol running through our bodies. It's not healthy for us, and it creates a lack of resourcefulness as we close in with the tunnel vision. With cortisol comes shallow breathing, it comes the tunnel vision, it comes the focus, it comes the more reactive nature, and it gets harder and harder to pause. So this is a preventive step. The next one I'll say is deep-seated or limiting beliefs about what's possible or what's available to you, or beliefs tied to old age. You may have been carrying around a set of beliefs about what old age means, about what it means to be 50, about what it means to be 60. Can't tell you how many people I've talked to who've said something, who are in their 50s or maybe 60s, but usually 50s. How often they've said things like, yeah, that's it for me. Pretty soon I'll just be on borrowed time. Yeah, this is the last motorcycle I'm going to buy, or this is the last bicycle I'm going to buy, because what they're seeing is that very shortly they'll be getting ready, so to speak, to run into the end. And the reality is a 50-year-old person has a high likelihood of living past 90 because of the way that life expectancy tables don't adjust with each person. You have to look at an adjusted table for that age. In other words, a life expectancy table starts at 0, and if you look at that table at 30 or 40 or 50, it's still based on 0. But by the time you take the deaths out that happen from 0 to, say, 45, 49, that 50-year-old life expectancy is higher, more like the early 90s. And they tell us because of advances in medicine, et cetera, and information about health, it'll be closer to 100, slightly over 100 by the time a 50-year-old person today gets to be 90. The point there is that if you knew when you were 30 that you were going to live till 90, would you have done some things differently? Well, at 50, if you knew that you were going to live till 90, are there some things that you're going to do differently? The point is, you can live your life in such a way that you won't be looking like you're that old. There are many people who are 70 and 80 who look much younger. In fact, in the U.S., we have so many politicians who are in their 70s and 80s. We've had some in their 90s. And so if we're willing to turn the country over to these folks who are this age, certainly we can take agency in our lives. The limiting beliefs can be a big factor, and those are the harder ones to overcome. But once you understand the nature of a belief, and it's out of the scope for here, but I talk about it in the 7 Fitness series, once we get to that point, many of us have been playing out this conditioning from our early childhood and early 20s and essentially reinforcing what we don't want. The biggest obstacle that we face is the unconscious using the past associations. I remember a cartoon that said, "We have met the enemy and it is us." Is that our unconscious, with positive intention, is actually working hard to keep us alive, but it's using conditioning, associations, and paradigms that we learn from age 0 to 7. By definition, past associations are less useful when we're moving into new territory. Designing a life that is unlike our past, this can keep people stuck for decades. This is where personal leadership comes in. In a future session, I'll talk about agency and personal leadership as they relate to designing and living the life that you'll love living. Meanwhile, you can take a look at some of the episodes that talk about the 7 fitness areas, and you can get a sense. In those 7 fitness areas, I walk you through the process of putting the conscious mind back in charge as opposed to having the unconscious in charge. It removes that problem with the unconscious triggering so quickly because the conscious mind can have that pause in place. The other thing that's nice about putting the conscious mind back in charge is that habit change becomes much easier. Sometimes just the awareness that a habit is not aligned with what you want, your values, your purpose, your direction, is enough to make it change. Not always, but that is a nice benefit. And you, as I said, you can look up the 7 fitness areas. I've got some episodes on that topic, and I'll be covering it again later after we get into agency and personal leadership, which we'll cover next week. All right, we'll see you then.